Welcome to the Connectable podcast.
The Connectable podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
We're going to get this thing going. Deb is not here today, which I'm bummed about. But at the same time, Deb, Kaleigh, I'm sure she would have loved to meet you, but she's also traveling all over the world right now with a bunch of her friends. So she's not really missing this podcast right now. So
I can't blame her.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's having a good time. So that being said, you're stuck with me. I'm very sorry for that, but we'll have a good conversation and we'll learn a little bit more about you. But before we get started, I'll just introduce you. Today's guest is a dietitian and personal trainer, Kaleigh Eastep. What's going on?
Not much. Excited to be here. Deb can't make it, but we'll make do. I think we'll have a good chat. It'll be good.
I think so. And this is the part of the podcast where I'm usually a little bit mean to Deb. It's like, this is actually gonna be a better conversation if Deb was here. You know what I mean? I told you she could have asked all the smart questions, but now I get to ask all the dumb questions. So
hey, honestly, I'm okay with that. Cause like when I get put on the spot, I get a little nervous. So if she's asking me like the hard stuff, I might clam up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's not give her too much credit. Her questions aren't that smart. So we miss you, Deb. We miss you. I'm kidding. So anyways, it's because this is called Connectable. We like to start off the show by kind of explaining how we're connected. And the funny thing is, like I tell people all the time, sometimes we have guests on that we know really well, like good friends, family of ours. And sometimes we have people on that we met literally as soon as the Zoom turned on. And that's kind of the case with you. Like we've been following you on social media for a little while, specifically Instagram. And I can't even remember how we started following you. I think I maybe saw one of your reels and I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. And you were making some jokes or some kind of comment on nutrition or exercising. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And so we started following you a little bit and it's like, hey, I wonder if you'd be open to being on the podcast. And you were kind enough to do so. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and actually get to know you more and what you're all about. So to start things off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into, nutrition, fitness, all of those things, and how you ended up where you are today.
Sure. So I'm originally from the Midwest, grew up in a really small town in central Illinois with my parents and my sister. I was originally going to go to college for fashion merchandising, and the last day of my senior year in high school, my father had a massive heart attack. And initially there wasn't that light bulb moment of, oh, his diet is interconnected with his heart attack. But the more I started to research and look into it, the more I realized like there was a very strong link between the way that I knew nutrition growing up. Every morning was 2 donuts, a chocolate yoo-hoo, school lunch, and then a Subway sandwich and whatever mom fried for dinner and a couple Debbie snacks for dessert, so that's just what I knew. And that's what my whole family has done. So once I realized that there was such a strong link, I was like, wow, how can I help somebody else to never feel this way? Whether it's another child not fearing that they're going to lose their parent, or a person who is experiencing a heart attack, how can I help to prevent that? So I switched my major from fashion merchandising to dietetics and never looked back.
Awesome. That's really interesting. Now I have a bunch of questions just based off of what you said, but first of all, I'm not gonna lie. The stuff, your like normal daily food course, some of that stuff sounds delicious. So okay. I'm definitely not a dietitian. I'm like, oh, the little Debbie snacks, those are awesome. But I know not good for you. But let me ask you this. So obviously you have clients and you're I believe you're a coach, a nutrition coach and a fitness coach. How many of the people that come to you for help or who want to work with you, is there a lot of times, is there that connection that's similar to you where they have a family member or maybe they themselves had a health scare that kind of caused them to look in that direction as far as improving their fitness and their health? Or is it not necessarily the case where they just like, hey, I just want to get in better shape? There's not like a scary personal thing happening. It's just, I just want to get in better shape. Like what ratio would you say is that?
I would say I typically have a roster, anywhere from 30 to 60 clients, mostly females. I work on the side with a few males, and I would say of those 60 people, maybe 2 or 3 have a scary health situation going on, or a family member. I have interned and worked in hospitals where that was more so the case, but for the population that I work with, typically it's women in their 20s, maybe early 30s, and they just want to look good. And I think it's important to help them understand that health isn't just about looking good. And I know plenty of people who are fit and shredded and are the most unhealthy people you'll ever meet. And it's just not a correlation in looking one certain way and being healthy. For example, if you look at bodybuilders, you're like, wow, that's like the epitome. They're so fit. But if you look at their day to day, they're barely eating, they're overutilizing exercise, they might be taking performance enhancing drugs, abusing caffeine, whatever the case is. So I think it's important to make that note for women, especially in their 20s, where eating disorders are so prevalent, that being thin isn't necessarily going to make you healthy.
Right. And I'm going to ask this next question because something you mentioned kind of reminded me of this. I'm going to ask this next question on behalf of Deb, because I guarantee she would be asking this right now. So I'll say this. One of the things that drives Deb crazy, as far as a trainer, is, and she's also a high school PE teacher. So anytime a young girl comes up to her and thinks that lifting heavy is going to cause her to get bulky, and if anybody's just listening and not watching, you could see Kaleigh's face, and she's in agreement here. Deb would be so happy. So I'm sure that's one of the myths out there that you probably drives you crazy too. But what are a few myths out there that maybe a client comes to you with, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. Let me educate you on this, or maybe stuff you see online on social media. What are a couple of those things that just, like, every time you see it, just makes you want to pull your hair out?
Oh yeah, there are so many. I could go on. I'm gonna have to get my my soapbox out, but
Yeah.
I would say that definitely for women, lifting heavy makes you bulky. Eating past 8 p.m. makes you fat. Eating carbs makes you fat. Those are all big ones that I get. I would say that a lot of people think that eating as little as possible and running as much as possible is the magic answer. And that's just really not it. It's so funny, the misconceptions that are out there, and there's so much money in diet culture and in the diet industry that as soon as one fad diet starts to fizzle out, there's going to be another one right away. They're going to try and sell you. So it's low fat, then it's low carb, then it's Atkins, then it's keto. It's just constantly evolving. So there's just, oh man, I could just go on. There are so many. It's crazy.
Well, I'm sure it keeps you on your toes too, because as a dietitian and as a coach and someone who's into the fitness world, you can never just take a break, right? There's always something new you have to research, always something new that you have to break down and explain to people why it's not beneficial for them. And so that's just got to be one of those things where it just keeps you, on your toes all the time, which would be a very interesting thing, because especially with the way the internet is right now, there's so much information, and at any moment, and you can't control it, right? Your clients are just on their phones, on their computers, and they're just looking stuff up. And then all of a sudden, they have this head full of knowledge that's good or maybe really, really bad and negative. How do you provide any kind of instruction for your clients? I mean, you can't say, hey, stay off your phone, don't research this, but I mean, do you try to at least make them aware of, hey, be careful of what you see on social media, be careful of what you research online, because it's not necessarily beneficial? Is that something you kind of coach them through as well?
Oh yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because just a couple of weeks ago, I had one of my female clients come to me and she's like, hey, I've been doing some research, which is always, I'm like, are you sure? But she's like, I've been doing some research and I think I have a tapeworm. I want to take this dewormer. And I was like, so she sends me this dewormer. It's a horse dewormer. And I'm like, and I had seen this on TikTok where people are taking horse dewormers and they're crapping their brains out because it's a horse dewormer. And they're like, see, I have a parasite. No, you don't. You just took a horse dewormer and like literally cleared house. And I just had to respond like, please don't get your nutrition advice from TikTok. She's like, ha ha ha. I knew you would like bust me. I was like, yeah, you didn't do your research. You watched the TikTok video. So like, so yeah, it's just like knowing where to look, I think is important, like peer reviewed journal articles. I like to really focus my nutrition recommendations in science. You know, I very, very rarely, if I never, will just base something off of anecdotal evidence. You know, if someone down the street, this works for me, I'm not going to say it's going to work for another client, you know? So being able to know where to look, peer-reviewed journal articles, not taking it from magazines, not taking it from TikTok. Who is telling you this? Are they trying to sell you something? And that's what I always tell my girls. If someone makes a nutrition claim, look into them. What are they trying to sell you? Is it a product? Is it a program? Is it a diet? Is it a meal plan? You know, and if there's nothing there, then look into their credentials. Are they based in science? But yeah, that is probably the biggest portion of my job, is just constantly debunking crazy stuff that I see on the internet. It's wild.
Oh, I bet. Well, let me ask you this. So anytime we have someone who on here, we've had, you know, filmmakers, we've had designers, we've had artists, musicians, you know, anybody in that creative world, I always like to ask them like, hey, what kind of process do you go through when it comes to the critique of your art, or, you know, when it comes to kind of your circle, like how tight do you keep your circle? Where do you get your information? Where do you get the criticism from that helps make you better? I imagine the same things for you, right? You probably have a pretty tight circle of other people in your field that you kind of lean on when you hear a piece of information, and maybe it's something you've researched and you want to know if they've heard anything. Like, what is that like for you? Like, what does that circle look like for you? And like, because obviously this is called Connectables. We're all about connection and creating those connections with people. What does that connection look like with you and your circle of other, you know, nutritionists and dietitians?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that there's a pretty strong correlation in the fitness dietitian world. Sorry.
Oh, we got a cat. Hey, that's our first cat on the podcast. We've had plenty of dogs come through, but the first cat. What's up?
She's always wanting to be on camera. She's a little ham.
There you go.
She's so cute. But I would say there's a really strong bond between fitness dietitians and fitness nutritionists, sports nutrition, just because it is such a different field than medical nutrition therapy. You know, we're not typically working with dialysis or diabetes or edema, things like that, hypertension that you're going to see in the hospital. It's more performance based, it's more physique based. So being able to talk with other dietitians, because there are some out there, some dietitians who maybe frown upon the fitness nutrition world just because it is so based body image. And there is such a big push for dietitians to be anti-diet, anti-body image, pro all bodies, which I 100% think is a fantastic movement, and body positivity is great. However, there are still going to be people who want to change their bodies. And if they're not coming to me, who's a licensed professional, they're going to go to someone that looks good and has abs and says, take these pills and do this instead. Sure. So I think, you know, really having that bond with dietitians I went to school with who are in the fitness field. I'm friends with the dietitian that works for the Rams. You know, just a lot of really cool connections in the field. So I try to keep those alive. I also, you know quite a few people in the medical field, and I think that's a really important network to have, as well as doctors, because they've got a lot of clout, which Sure. is frustrating as a dietitian, because we're also healthcare professionals and we don't get the same respect, but Sure. it's nice to have doctors to bounce things off of. Hey, I saw this research. What do you think? My boyfriend actually is going to med school. So it's really fun and he's also going through his personal training certification. So for us to be like, look at this article or look at this research, it's a really fun dynamic.
That's awesome. It's actually funny because usually before I do these interviews, I talk to my wife and she's like, hey, who's on the podcast? And I was telling her a little bit about you. And I said, yeah, I've seen plenty of pictures of her and her boyfriend on Instagram. And once again, someone has been in way better shape than me on this podcast. I need to do more work. That way I'm not in worse shape than all my guests. You know what I mean? But it was just
No.
funny. I was just telling her that it's like, you should see these two. They're in awesome shape. So
Oh, thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that. Thank
absolutely.
you.
Um,
It's
yeah, for sure. Well, it's cool that you have someone, that you're in a relationship with, that you can enjoy that with. I mean, I feel like, is it, it's kind of going in a different road, but like, is it possible to be in your field and like be with someone that's not like into the fitness world? Like, it seems like it would be incredibly difficult. You know what I'm saying?
You would be surprised. Yes, there are quite a few out there, and it is a hard dynamic to navigate, definitely. So I think that more often than not, it's a much healthier relationship if you have someone that is interested in the same thing, because it can be kind of tough when you want to eat healthy and your partner wants to eat McDonald's every single night.
Right.
So.
Well, I was going to say, because we've had a couple of bodybuilders on this podcast, and they, some that were former bodybuilders, and then one guy who's currently doing it. But that was the one common thing that always came up, was like, man, like this world is really crazy. You get in some crazy shape, but it really does tax your friendships and relationships, because people are like, hey, let's go out to get food on a Friday night. It's like, can't really do it, or they're bringing their own Tupperware, of food, and then people are like, what are you doing? So I imagine even more so if it's a significant other, it would be really challenging. So
Yeah.
I need to have someone on the podcast that is the polar opposite of their partner. You know what I mean? Like you said, the McDonald's versus the kale smoothie. I need to have that couple on here to see how that works, because I can't imagine.
It's tough. I actually was a bodybuilder back in my college days, and being a college student on top of being a bodybuilder it's a really strange world to be in, because Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, all your friends are going out drinking. Hey, come out with us, come party. And it's like, no, sorry, I've got 4 a.m. cardio and I have to drink my CAAs and eat my chicken breast. I can't, so it was definitely taxing on my friendships and my relationships at the time. And back then my boyfriend at the time and my roommate were pizza, burgers. Like, I wasn't cooking anymore, so they were bringing all of us home, and I'm like, I hate you guys, this sucks. So yeah, it's tough for sure.
Oh, that would be awful, especially something like pizza, because it's like you can't escape it. You can't go to the other room and just like block it out, because you're just going to smell it the entire time.
Exactly. It was hard. I had this weird thing where I wanted to cook for other people just to like live through them. So I would like make all of these elaborate dishes just to watch them eat it. I'm like, is it good? Tell me everything. So it was kind of probably a little disordered, honestly, but you had to do what you had to do to get through it. So
did you start bodybuilding and end bodybuilding in college, or did it extend past your college days?
It was just during college in 2017. So my junior year of college.
Okay.
I had been lifting at this point for like 4 or 5 years, and I had been a previous athlete. I played volleyball and soccer all through high school, and I played club volleyball up until that point in college. And I was missing being competitive, and thought, well, if I'm not good enough to play on a team of any sport, I'll do an individual sport. And did not know that bodybuilding wasn't as intense as it is. It is one tough sport. And once I was in it, I was like, well, I'm in it now, I can't quit. And so kind of got wrapped into it. And it was a fun experience. It's cool to say, yeah, I did it. Check it off your bucket list, but not something I'll ever do again.
And I feel like the people that we've talked to that have stopped doing it said the same thing. It's like a cool experience, not going to ever happen again, just because the mental side is brutal. Like the mental, not just what we just talked about as far as how it affects relationships and friendships and all those things, but just the grind and the taxing that both your body and your mind take is just incredible. So how many competitions did you do?
I did 2. I did the St. Louis Pink Muscle Fest, and I did the Kentucky Muscle.
Okay. And how'd you do?
I did really well. Actually, my first show, I got 2nd in open and 3rd in novice, which is funny because usually you do better in novice than you do in open. Somehow I pulled it out to do the opposite.
Okay.
Kentucky Muscle, I won 1st in my class in novice and 2nd in the open out of, I think there was like 50 girls or something. So it was pretty exciting to go into a big show and have never competed before. And, you know, there's this stigma of you have to have a big name coach. You have to have a brand name bikini. Like, you have to spend all this money. My mom made my suit. I had a coach from my hometown that nobody knew. And I did well. You know, you just have to like kind of block out that outside noise and just put your head down and go. And it's also weird how much really the posing and the stage presence plays such a big role, because I would say objectively looking at my physique compared to the other girls on stage, I wasn't first place worthy, but I think my stage presence from doing pageants back in the day kind of helped. So it kind of squeaked me over the edge a little bit.
Okay. That was my next question. Like what about, like, especially your first couple of events ever, you felt comfortable, but that makes sense. The pageant thing would definitely play a part for sure. That's interesting. And so your competitive side didn't kick in, and because you did really well. So that never even played a part where it's like, maybe I could keep going with this. You were just like, I'm done.
Yeah, I was pretty done at that point. There was part of me, because since I got first in my class, I was nationally qualified. So I could have gone on to do nationals. I think that year, I can't remember where they were now, but they had, you know, the big national show, and I was like 2 weeks out, and I was like, oh, should I just do it? Should I, you know, just to say that I did. I probably won't do well, but it'd be fun. And I was just done. I was like, I want to eat everything. I want to like take a rest day. I'm over it. So I stopped, and I gained 30 pounds within like a month and a half. And I had to really do some serious brain work and finding my health all over again. So it was a wild journey, but it was awesome.
That's interesting. And that's kind of part of the journey too, right? I imagine for most bodybuilders, once you stop competing, the weight gain or whatever, whatever body transformation happens after you're done is probably, it's not like your journey is over, right? Because you're done bodybuilding. There's like a whole nother piece of it that people don't really talk about, but you kind of have to recalibrate with, what a normal life would look like. How long did that take for you to get back to that point?
I would say it probably took me almost a year to feel normal around again. That reverse process, most people will continue working with their coach and they'll gradually increase their calories back up to a maintenance intake, and then they can kind of intuitively eat from there and do their thing. But I thought I knew better, and I was like, I'm a future dietitian, I can do this. And I fired my coach. I just didn't continue working with him and just started eating all the time. And when you're that deprived for half of a year leading up to your show, everything just looks good. And I went through a phase where I would almost black out, and I would like come to, and I'd be in my pantry with like 3 empty Pop-Tart wrappers. And I'm like, what just happened? And it was just such a weird, it was really strange. So by the time that I finally was no longer tracking and could eat like a normal person without overeating or binging or, severely restricting and overusing cardio to compensate, I would say it took a true year, if we're being completely honest.
Wow. That's crazy. And is, sometimes when we're like, we go to summer break or when you graduate from college and you're finally done with school, I don't know about you, but I always had this feeling where once it was done, maybe for at least 4 or 5 weeks after that, it just always felt like I was supposed to be doing something. I need to write a paper. I need to, prepare a speech. I need to do all these different things. And it's like, oh no, wait a minute. I'm done with that. Like, I don't need to do that stuff anymore. Is that what it felt like with the bodybuilding stuff? Like, when you were eating, the Pop-Tart, it was like, wait, what am I doing? Oh wait, no, I can actually eat this now and I'm not compromising my training. Like, was there that constant feeling for a while?
It was, yeah. And I remember the first day that I had some clarity with that, I was craving a grilled cheese sandwich and I was going back and forth. No, you shouldn't. It's too many carbs. It's too many fats. It's not enough protein. And I was finally like, what does it matter? Like, I can have a grilled cheese sandwich and it is perfectly okay. And that was the first day I think I started to transition into having that better relationship with food. But for a long time, it was like, I should be eating my green beans and my chicken breast and that's it. This isn't right. So it's definitely a mind altering experience.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the body positivity. And I don't want you to get in trouble with anything that you say with, towards people. But it's an interesting thing, right? Because I imagine like if your body's going to, if you're doing the right thing, your body's going to have to change at some point. So like, obviously, like you said, you want people to be comfortable in their own skin, whatever makes them happy, makes them happy. But when it comes to like, if you're looking at like their actual health, if they were doing the right things, like their body would almost have to change, wouldn't it? Or is that not true?
I would say in a lot of circumstances, yes,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things that someone says, if you're fat, you are at higher risk of diseases X, Y, and Z. And I always kind of play devil's advocate, because is it their body fat that's causing these risk factors, or is it their lifestyle factors? They're not exercising, they're not eating fruits and vegetables, they're not getting fiber, they're not drinking water, their sleep is terrible. Also, kind of a chicken or the egg situation. Were they having these lifestyle habits before they got fat, or were they fat and then that caused these lifestyle habits? More often than not, they didn't start out overweight, right? They started having these not so great lifestyle habits. They aren't exercising anymore, they're not moving, they work a desk job, they're sitting a lot. All of those factors are also risk factors for disease and cholesterol, diabetes, obesity. So you would be surprised at how many folks will start taking matters into their own hands. They start eating better, they eat great, on paper. And of course, we never know if someone's being completely truthful, but we can see their tracking and see what they say. And like, I'm doing everything, I swear, but their bodies just don't change all that much. And I think there is something to be said about a happy set point for people. And if you look at animals, they're all sorts of shapes and sizes. Why are humans any different? Do I think it's incredibly healthy to be 300 pounds overweight? Probably not. Of course not. But, I just think that's kind of a tough question.
Yeah.
Because I've met people who by BMI standards are unhealthy, but their blood work is great. They exercise frequently. They, eat really well. And their doctor's like, well, you still need to lose weight. And it's like, why? They're perfectly healthy, so what's for what other than societal standards? So that's just my take on it. Of course, someone can listen to this podcast and be like, this girl's an idiot, which, to each their own, but I'm just never going to shame somebody for not being in the body that we've made them feel like they need to be in, if they're doing the things that make them feel the healthiest.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. That's it's really interesting. There's just so much more. And like you said, I think a lot of times we do just judge it by the outward appearance and the societal standards, and that's just kind of what you assume. The person that's got the six pack must be, that's like the epitome of health. And if you're not at that point, then you're not as healthy as you can be, and it's just not the case. So I think that's interesting. What do you think people struggle with the most? Like the people you work with, and maybe not even just the people you work with, but just people in general, when they're trying to get in better shape and like actively trying to get in better shape? Is it the food consumption, or is it the exercise? Like, is it finding time to exercise within their schedule, or is it just making the right choices when the convenient choice is right there in front of their face?
I would say it's nutrition. And I say that because nutrition is so emotionally charged. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, My 600-Pound Life, or 1,000-Pound Sisters.
Yeah.
If you listen to the stories of the folks on those shows, I would say 90% of the time they have some sort of abuse when they were a child, sexual, emotional, physical, and their body size has come as almost a layer of protection. So if you think about America or the globe as a whole, and the amount of people who have been set through some sort of traumatic event in their life, suddenly nutrition becomes a comfort for them. They can turn to it. It always tastes good. It always makes them feel good. It's always there. It's always hot. Or folks that struggle with food insecurity, growing up, didn't have food. Now food's around. I have to eat as much as I can because I don't know when I'm going to get it again. Even if that's not their current state, that's what they've been basically systemized to believe. So I would say nutrition is the tough part, and people think it's a willpower issue when in reality it's a a lot of times a historical traumatic response issue. I think fitness also plays a role, finding time when our busy schedules, you work a 9 to 5, you're exhausted when you get home, or you got kids and they have to be at school, you can't really get to the gym or whatever the case is. But if your nutrition's not there, fitness really is kind of sort of spinning your wheels.
Yeah, that makes
Like
sense.
it's cool. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, like you should still be exercising, it's still good for your heart, it's still good for your muscle, but if you're working out and then going and eating Chick-fil-A every single night or McDonald's, it's probably not going to do you a whole lot of good.
And I guess you could say it's almost like the nutrition is like the foundation of a house, right? Like, and then everything like that you build on top of that through exercise. If the foundation's not strong, then like you said, it's just kind of all crumbled or be pointless because there's nothing to build it on. But if the nutrition's solid, then you can start really seeing right, you start seeing the real benefits from the exercise. And I guess those two things kind of go hand in hand, because I imagine if you're eating well, then there's probably that increased motivation to get out there and exercise, right? Because you just feel better. And it's like, okay, well, I can go out and go for a walk at the very least, or do this or that. Like, I imagine those two things kind of work hand in hand. But yeah, I mean, I that was gonna be my guess. I don't know anything about nutrition, but I was gonna guess that the nutrition part of it is, so it feels like it's a little bit more controllable, right? Because like you said, if the schedule doesn't allow for exercise sometimes, it's kind of tough to do. But you can always kind of have a better grasp on what you're eating, it seems
Right.
like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is really dependent upon where you live. If you're in a food desert, and this is something people don't really think about either. I grew up in a very small town. Our closest grocery store was 10 minutes away. Then it burned to the ground, and our closest one was 30 minutes away. So for somebody who's without a car, what are they supposed to do? But in town, we have a Dairy Queen, we have Hardee's, we have a Subway, we have a Chinese restaurant, Casey's Pizza. They have access to those things that are quick and convenient, but that's not their fault. But other people would say, this is a willpower issue. You're fat because you can't stop eating Casey's Pizza. Where are they supposed to go, right? We don't have a grocery store with fresh fruit and vegetables. So I would say in most cases, nutrition's easier to control, but it's just such a hard thing. Like, dietitians get such a bad rap because we always say it depends. There's never just a straightforward answer, but it really does. It depends, I guess.
No, that's a great point. I never really thought about that. I mean, I've heard that before in different situations, and people that I've in different like organizations I've talked to, like where it's like inner city, like working with inner city like elementary school kids. Like, you hear some of that stuff and whatever's available and not available. But like, I didn't really think about it in the context of, you and I were talking off air, kind of where you grew up, and how my wife has family out in Illinois, and you may know them. I can't remember their names right now. So the bad thing is my mother-in-law listens to this, and she's probably like doing one of these, like, I can't believe. I'm very sorry, Paula, but they're out there. And like you said, in areas like that where it's just less available, it would be really tricky. So it's not a matter of like, hey, you can kind of control your diet. It's like, well, we only have so many options. So in a case like that, if someone was in a situation like that, like, what would you recommend they do? I mean, I know it's kind of case by case basis, but if their options are limited, I mean, how do you handle a situation like that? Like, if you're coaching someone in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, considering financial status, one thing that most people don't realize is that food banks are available to anybody. There's not like an income requirement. So if you are just falling on hard times, or you don't have access to a grocery store and you don't have money to buy a car to get there, you can visit your local food bank to get some more nutritious foods than your local drive-through. But also considering that most places now have pretty healthy options, grilled chicken sandwiches and side salads and sides of fruit cups. So, trying to see some color in your diet if you are having to eat at a fast food restaurant, because that's what you have access to. Thankfully, a lot of gas stations nowadays are starting to carry bananas and apples and, beef sticks and protein in different little yogurt cups. So being able to learn how to read nutrition labels, I think, is really important for people. Does this have protein? Does it have a ton of added sugar? Is there a better choice here? Even though I'm limited, out of these things, what can I choose that would make me feel the best? And then also, when you do get access to a grocery store, choosing non-perishables. I think there's a lot of pressure in get the fresh produce, get all the fruits and veggies. But if you only get to make a trip to the store once a month, those are going to go bad in a week. So frozen, canned, even if it's cheap, like grab a bunch of it, stockpile it, and then be able to, spread it throughout the month, I think is kind of the best way to handle it. I think we're coming up on a generation where there is going to be so much higher access to healthier foods, fingers crossed. But until then, just doing the best that you can.
Yeah. And that probably, I imagine anybody who's hearing that it probably takes like a massive amount of pressure off their shoulders, right? Because they might think, well, I can only do this if I have access to X, Y, and Z. And hearing that, it's like, no, you can work within, whatever's available to you and still have a really huge impact on your health. It's just a matter of, identifying it and knowing what you have to work with. So I imagine that's a really beneficial piece of information for people that are maybe on that journey right now. Let me see, where do I want to go? Let me ask you this. What's your, because I imagine I'm guessing that you eat pretty healthy. For the most part. Okay. So what is the kryptonite? Like, what is that one thing that, okay, I got to stay away from this thing, but it's so difficult. I love chocolate. I'm just gonna say it for myself. I love chocolate, pizza, stuff like that. And I know it's like, I shouldn't do it, but right now I've been really good for a long time. I haven't done it. When I say a long time, I mean like a couple of weeks, but I'm still trying to stay away from it as much as possible. But like chocolate is definitely one that's a killer for me. What is that for you?
I love chocolate. And it's so funny. I have to laugh because, so for reference, I'm 5'4", my boyfriend is 6'5", and we have these shelves where, there's a very tight difference between the two of us. But we have this shelf and there's a bunch of candy on the top shelf. And so he can just, grab it. But sure. I have to reach up on my tippy toes and like climb up on the counters. And he makes fun of me because candy is my thing. Like I love gummies, sour candy, chocolate. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
And I am one of those people that has to have a little something sweet after every meal or it doesn't feel complete. So he'll laugh because he'll be, reading or doing something and he'll hear me like rustling around and he says he looks back and I'm like peeking up in the top. And I'm just like, leave me alone. Like, let me just get my candy in peace. But yeah, candy for sure. I'm a big sweet tooth. Trader Joe's has this chocolate pretzel sea salt situation that I will just kill them. And they come in a pound. It's a pound of chocolate.
Oh,
you can't get anything smaller. So I always have one of those in my cabinet. And that's probably my number one.
That sounds delicious. Like I said, I'm trying to stay away from it right now. And that was a dumb question. I should not have asked that question because I'm so hungry right now.
Oh, it's so good. But, I really try to have a really open mind to having those in the house. So many people are like, I can't even have that. Like I would eat it all the time if I did. And I think once you have it around more often, it kind of loses its luster and it's not so like alluring. It's not off limits, right? So you can just have a little bit, feel satisfied, and it stays in your cabinet for the next time that you want some. So that's kind of my approach. You'd be surprised. My boss is always like, every time I see you, you're eating candy. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Candy is delicious. I love like Sour Patch and all of that stuff. It's a problem, huge problem for me. I remember, so that movie, I don't know if it was Creed 1 or Creed 2, Michael B. Jordan, obviously a movie like that comes out, you see his physique, like all of a sudden Men's Health, all these magazines are giving, the tips and stuff like that. And two things that always really stuck out to me. One was how much water he was drinking during the training. And when we first saw the movie, my wife and I saw the movie, I said, yeah, I was trying to drink that same amount of water that he was. I'm like, obviously it's working for him. And so I was drinking that amount of water and I leaned over to my wife and I said, yeah, this is the movie that I found out this whole water thing. She's like, oh, okay. And then he first comes on the screen, you just see his back and she leans over to me in the middle of a movie theater. She's like, just keep drinking the water. I'm like, hey, why? Now I felt self-conscious during the whole movie. So that was one thing. But the other thing that I remember, and I don't know if you have any insight into this, or like scientifically why this would be beneficial, but during one of those two movies, he was eating his trainer was telling him to eat gummy bears after training. Like, what is, I forgot what the reasoning was. What is that about? Because that sounds awesome.
Yeah, so that is because it's a simple carbohydrate. So it's sugar, is very readily used by the body. It causes a very quick reaction in your blood sugar, which creates an insulin response. And insulin is anabolic, so it helps us it's a builder hormone. So when we are post-exercise, our glycogen stores, which is our energy store for exercise, which we find in our liver and our muscle, is totally depleted. Or depending on the intensity of your exercise, it's usually depleted. So eating those very quick digesting carbohydrates like candy, Pop-Tarts, cereal helps to replenish those glycogen stores and helps to preserve your muscle from being broken down. So there is science to that. And I am a huge advocate of Pop-Tarts. I have a pre-workout Pop-Tart and usually like a post-workout bagel or a bowl of cereal or something kind of fun like that.
I was going to say, because that's like the second time or third time you brought up Pop-Tarts. So I'm like, she must be a huge fan. What's your favorite flavor?
Oh gosh, I love so many different Pop-Tarts. I would say the sugar cookie that comes out around Christmas time is my number one of all time. But
Okay.
there's also a lemon meringue that's new, and that one's really good.
Interesting. I haven't had either one of those. I'm aware of the lemon meringue, and it looks pretty good.
Mhm.
I love the s'mores. Like I love s'mores.
Oh, yeah.
The s'mores are really
Mhm.
good. Well, how do you feel about the brown sugar ones?
I think they're overrated, and
That's,
I feel like you love them or you hate them. I don't like them that much.
I don't like them either. And I'm gonna
Mhm.
tell my wife this later too, because so she loves them, and I've never enjoyed them. But like I like the strawberry ones, the
Mhm.
s'mores. Like I like all those, but I know a ton of people that love, like you said, a lot of people that love the brown sugar ones. I just never got it.
No, me neither. I never was into the brown sugar, the like chocolate, double chocolate fudge sundae situation. No, I'm good with that. Like s'mores, lemon, and sugar cookie are my top three for sure.
Okay, but you said the sugar cookie only comes out during Christmas.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh, it's so good.
All right, I need to make a note. Check that out during Christmas time because that sounds delicious. Like I said, now I'm just making myself hungry. So we're gonna keep this thing moving. So, like I had mentioned before, we got connected with you because of social media, and I feel like you do a really good job on social media as far as engaging with people and putting out content that is engaging, especially like your reels, because I feel like a lot of your reels are, um, it feels like, I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, like be like debunking like things that are out there, right? Like I know there's a lot more to it, but um, how how much time do you have to spend creating content? Like how much do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you just do it because you have to? Like what are your feelings towards all of the social media aspects of what you do, and how this is kind of like a loaded question, but like how much has it helped you connect with people, and allowing them to see what you do and your own personal journey?
Hmm. Yeah, great question. I love it. I do. I was always in drama club growing up, so I love the camera. I love acting. I love like the voiceover aspect of that, and it's a really fun way to make nutrition easy to digest. No pun
Look
intended.
at
But if it's funny, if nutrition is funny and it's quick and you're not like reading research in like paragraphs of it, and I can just give you boom, 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 here's the facts, here's a funny video to back it up, you're going to remember it. So I love being able to connect with people in that way. I would say most videos, depending on the like how in depth they are and how many different words I put on the screen, I can probably knock one out in 15 minutes, 20 minutes if I'm having a good day. Some days I'm like, that there's that reel right now. It's like, come on, brain, think of things. That's how I've felt a lot lately.
yeah.
So that one is really accurate. But what was the last part of your question? I forgot.
Yeah, that's okay. It's my fault. I asked you like 5 questions in one. It was, oh, so how is the social media engagement like really really helped you connect with people, whether it be a client or maybe it's just someone that enjoys following you and enjoys your nutrition tips? Like how much has that helped you connect with people?
Yeah, I would say it has helped me immensely. And funny enough, I get a lot of males who will reach out and say, I sent your profile to my wife, and their wives will sign up with me as a client. So it's a really cool dynamic, because I do really target women in my posts because it's relatable as a female, and working with so many females, it's easy to know what they're going through. What pain points can I talk on? What questions do they have that I can answer in this quick 10-second video? So I do have that connection big time. And I'll get a lot of older folks who are like, I'm a veteran or I'm retired, but I love watching your videos. They make me smile, but I didn't know this. I, for so many years, thought you couldn't eat after 8 p.m. And now I'm eating and I feel great. And it's like, whoa, just this one video helped to make them feel better. It's a cool thing. And it's crazy seeing it cross continents. I'll have people from Europe reach out and be like, oh, I'm, in the UK and I saw your video, and can I get this here? This particular product you talked about, does that ship here? It's like, whoa, somebody in another country watched my video. It's like, it's wild.
That is a crazy, yeah. I remember the first time, because Deb and I have done a couple of podcasts together, and the very first podcast we did was aimed towards coaches and high school coaches and athletes. And I remember the first time, as you like on our hosting site, you see the first time when like a download pops up in like the UK or China or Brazil. It's like, oh, this is kind of crazy. Like it is a weird feeling, but like that's just like a download, right? For you, it's like someone's reaching out saying, hey, I love your stuff. How do I get this product, or how do I, connect further? Like it's a really cool thing about social media. And for all of the negatives, especially in your world, like the negatives, I mean, it's just such a like we talked about earlier, such a weird battle to fight, because the negatives are literally like right in front of you. So like they might see a post from you saying, hey, this is like X, Y, and Z, Y. I know you've mentioned the keto diet before. I've seen that. Why this is not the best, or why it doesn't work for everybody, or whatever, whatever it might be. And then the next post from someone else might be like, hey, here's this fad diet that you should try. It's like, oh my gosh, like you can't escape it, but it's just part of what you have to deal with. And it's part of that social media world. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the keto diet?
So boxed back out. The keto diet is one of those things that just gets me so heated, because most people don't know that the keto diet was initially utilized for epileptic children, because there's like science to show that it helps to mitigate the symptoms of their seizures that they have, based around their, neurons and a whole bunch of sciencey stuff. But the reason you lose weight on the keto diet is because you're in a calorie deficit, just like you would be if you continue to eat carbohydrates and just watch your intake. But also, for every 1 gram of carbohydrate that we consume, our body holds on to 3 grams of water, because the carbohydrates and sodium and water all kind of follow each other, and again are stored in those glycogen stores in our muscle. That's why you notice if you eat like a high carb meal and you go work out, you're feeling a little bit more pumped up. When we cut all of our carbohydrates out, our body lets go of all that extra water. So we see that initial big drop in weight, and we're like, wow, this works. But in reality, it doesn't, because it's unsustainable. You might lose the weight, but you're going to eventually want to eat a potato again. You're going to get the weight back, because you're going to go crazy on the carbs and the foods you didn't allow yourself to have, and you're going to find yourself in the same spot. So yeah, to me, it's just like a no-brainer. I also think that the long-term science of the effects of hormone health and heart health, if you do the keto diet for years and years and years on end, at this point, the longest I've seen someone do it is 5 years. And I'm like, well, 5 years is a long time, for sure, but it's not a lifetime. And right. I'm like, well, when you're 65, 70, let me know. If you're still on it, I will eat my words, and I will buy you a lobster dinner with no bread on the side.
No bread.
Like, I just, I don't know. I'm just not a fan. Sustainability is my whole thing.
Sure.
If you follow me on Instagram, I'm constantly talking about sustainability, and diets that restrict that intensely aren't sustainable for most people, 99% of the population.
That was very well said. And I feel like you did a great job, not just like letting it fly with how you really, really feel about it. I could tell in her face.
Yeah, I had to choose my words wisely there, because also the folks that do the keto diet are very passionate about it. And I get yelled at a lot on the internet. So I'm just like, I'll take it, whatever. You'll probably get blocked by me if you're too mean about it.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Like I imagine that on social media, because of what you do, there's always some clown out there that wants to say why you're wrong, even though it's like, I don't know why we're doing this, but
Right.
how do you deal with that stuff? Do you just kind of block it out? Do you let it slide? I mean, you kind of have to develop thick skin, I imagine, especially, because you have a decent following. So a lot of people are seeing your content. So it gives more opportunity for people to critique and criticize. But like, how do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, if it comes of a place of malicious intent, some people will see what I say about, a particular diet being unsustainable, and they attack my character or my appearance. And I'm like, I'm not sure how those two things are related. So in that instance, I just block. I'm like, why? In other cases, if they ask a valid question, or not a valid question, but a true question that they want a response to, I try my best to provide as much evidence as I can and explain things to them. But if they come at me in a way that's attacking, I just kind of let them go, and either just let them go unresponded or delete it, and then have a personal, like, one-to-one conversation with them in a DM, or just not at all. Because when people are that intense with things and that opinionated, you're not going to change their mind. So it's kind of a waste of my time to, fire the fingers back. It's like, whatever.
Right. And I feel like are you really seeking, the truth in the situation as far as this question you have, or are you just getting some enjoyment out of picking a fight and getting a rise out of someone? Like, I feel like that's the case a lot. I follow a lot of obviously sports, sports Instagram accounts. That's all it is. It's just like, I don't know, because some people, I'm like, how much time do you have in the day? Like, how you can just do this all the time? Like,
Right.
I have a lot more things I need to do. Like, how is this, something you can do all day, but people
Right.
find a way to do it. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I think too, people will make claims about specific diets without realizing that according to like hypothesis theory and science, that the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. So if they're coming at me and saying the keto diet is the best diet because it makes you lose weight, I'm like, show me the proof. And they're like, well, you look it up. I'm like, well, you that's not how this works. Like, you made the claim, you show me the proof. That's how this works, So I can look it up. I'm not going to, because I don't buy into it, but
Right.
whatever.
It's a bizarre thing to say.
Right.
Go do my research. Like, what?
Yeah,
I didn't do
exactly.
that.
Right.
Very strange. You live in a weird world. I'm glad I don't do what you do because that would drive me crazy. Let me ask you this before I get you out of here, because I don't want to keep you too late. So I have two more. I have three more quick questions for you. One is, so obviously it sounds like if there's anything that has the word diet at the end of it, it's maybe not the best. But is there a diet that maybe like had some promise or some hope, where it's like, you know what, that one's close, still problematic, but like that one might have been the closest. Obviously, over all these years, you've had keto, you have a carnivore diet, you have what was like the South Beach diet, right? Back in the day, all these different things, Atkins. Is there one that you feel like, oh man, it could have been a really good thing, but not quite there? Is there one that was almost there?
I would say the Mediterranean diet
Okay.
is pretty good. And that's just based on Mediterranean culture's intake, their
Sure.
food that they eat. It's a lot of fish, it's a lot of fresh vegetables and healthy fats from olives and cheeses and things like that. So I think that one, and I would say if you look into it, most, like the American Heart Association, the Dietetics Academy really promotes the Mediterranean diet, because if you look at their longevity, folks on the Mediterranean, in the Mediterranean culture, they live a long time. and
Sure.
they have very healthy hearts, very healthy body weights, very active, long lives. So I would say that. But as far as like South Beach, you know, I don't totally hate Weight Watchers. I don't hate it more as much as I hate other diets, because it's similar to counting macros, but in a different way. They just give you points, and
Yeah.
you don't, you know, with Weight Watchers, you know, a donut might be 6 points, whereas a piece of lean chicken breast and fruits and vegetables are 0. So you can eat as much of those as you want. It's very great at promoting fruit and veggie intake, lean protein intake. So that, you know, like that's pretty good. And it's not saying that you can't have things like a piece of cake or ice cream. It's just saying, be careful of this intake. It's going to take your points, which is take up more calories. You're not going to feel as satisfied. You can still have it. Just be aware of the amount that you're eating.
Interesting. Okay. Perfect. Do you have a favorite recipe? Like, you don't need to give all the ingredients, but like, do you have a favorite recipe that is on the healthy side that like just tastes delicious that you would recommend to people?
Oh man, you should ask my boyfriend this question. He is a big fan of the food that he's like, all these girls say they can cook. And then I met you and you actually can. And I was like, oh, well,
Okay.
but I would say I make potatoes a lot, which I think get a bad rap. People are like, oh, you can't have potatoes, but I will air fry the little
Mm.
like creamer potatoes, and then I'll do smart butter, parsley, garlic, salt, and pepper, and those are really good. Air fried for 400 minutes, 400 degrees.
Don't do it for 400 minutes.
Do it for 400 minutes. Everyone's houses are burning down. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's be on that podcast. This is nuts.
Yeah. If that happened, I'm definitely deleting this episode. Just so you know, wasted an hour.
That's fair. But 400 degrees for like 20 minutes, and they're perfect every time. And I also make a really good chicken Parmesan burger with ground chicken, marinara, and provolone cheese to die for. So good.
That sounds amazing.
Mhm.
We'll have your boyfriend on next time, and he can just give us the list. Like, he can give us the ranking of what you make. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
He would be happy with that, I'm sure.
Perfect. So let me ask you this is the last question we ask people. And I apologize. I should have given you more of a heads up on this one. But I have no doubt that you'll be able to answer this one, no problem. So obviously it's called Connectable, and we like to help our audience get connected to our guests and vice versa. And we also like to give our guests an opportunity to toss out a suggestion. We call it our connection suggestion. And it could be a person, a brand, an organization, really anything you want, something that you feel like our audience should be aware of and get connected to. Do you have something that you would want to suggest or give a shout out to right now?
Yeah, I would say the team that I work for, Happy and Fit K, her name is Kristen. She's incredible, and she has a really big focus on mindfulness and self-love and a lot of really cool things in conjunction with nutrition and fitness. And her Instagram is Happy and Fit K, or our community page is HFK Community. And it's a really cool place. We post twice a week. We post 2 different educational captions. If you sign up for our email list, you get a free workout, a free recipe, and a Mindset Monday email every week. And it's a really cool community. I love it. Love being part of it.
That's awesome. And okay, I lied to you. That just sparked another thought in my head. The community side of this, because obviously you do coach clients. And I always feel like in these types of things, the community and the connections you make with the people that you're working with is huge. So like how much do people benefit from a community like that versus just trying to go about this thing on their own?
Yeah, it is immensely impactful. I would say that it plays a role for a lot of people in being successful versus not. In fact, this evening, every week we have a team call, and one of our girls said, I took my very first progress photos and it made me just want to shut down. I felt so self-conscious and thought, why bother? And it was cool because every other girl that was on the call, I think we had, 13 girls show up tonight, and every single one of them was like, I felt the same way. I promise, just keep pushing. I'm 3 months in and I feel so much better. And having those beginning photos to look back at is so important. and just being able to build each other up when you've been there. A lot of girls will go through, or men and women will go through these same stepping stones in their journey, feeling that insecurity, feeling nervous in the gym, not knowing where to go, and to have somebody else that gets it. And it's like, I've been there. I was you 3 months ago, and now look at me. It's really cool.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. So if people are hearing this and they want to get connected with you, they want to follow you on social media, they want to learn about all the reasons why the keto diet's bad, or if they just want some fun videos, where can they follow you? Anywhere and everywhere, Instagram, all that stuff.
I am just on Instagram, where you can follow me at freshkale.rd.
Kaleigh, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for just sharing some of your insight and your knowledge with us. And, we just look forward to continue following you and your journey and where it takes you. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Josh. It's been great. And I hope to come back again in the future. Absolutely.
Like I said, we got to get you and your boyfriend on here so you guys can talk about, we can put them on the spot and say, hey, what are the 5 recipes she's best at? And then what are the sons, maybe a little iffy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, Kaleigh, thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.